nonprofit organization that serves victims of domestic violence and their children in Northwest Arkansas. We're actually one of the oldest domestic violence shelters in the nation, and we're started right here in Fayetteville due to some community members coming together to address the growing awareness of domestic violence as an issue in our community in the late 70s. So women from the First United Methodist Church, University of Arkansas, and some community activists basically all came together with no money and no real plan or direction and decided that they were going to take a stand to support survivors, and we've been going strong ever since. So that's just a good example of the power of what Fayetteville can do. But we work with survivors and their children, and each year we work with over 1,000 families in our community that are looking to find peace in their own homes and in violent relationships. So those are certainly our friends and family that are experiencing domestic violence in Northwest Arkansas. And I think one of the biggest things that we hear when we're thinking about domestic violence is, why would someone stay in a relationship that is not safe for them? If that happened to me, I would be out immediately. And I think that sometimes if you have not experienced violence, it's easy to have that belief system. But the reality is that leaving domestic violence is actually really, really dangerous, which seems the opposite, right? That leaving would restore safety, but actually there's often an escalation of violence that happens when someone tries to leave. And the best data that we have that is that your risk of homicide actually increases by about 70% when you consider leaving a relationship that's dangerous. It's literally sometimes safer to stay. And it's hard to wrap your mind around that, but that is what longitudinal data will tell us. And so that's really why the domestic violence movement was created, is that because leaving is so dangerous, it provides a safe haven, a place for survivors to leave safely and to get the resources and support that they need to do that, so that their risk of homicide can be reduced. And when survivors partner with domestic violence shelters to leave, their risk of homicide actually decreases by about 60%. So it's pretty substantial. Okay. The other thing that we see is that when you're experiencing domestic violence, you often have your resources and support systems that have been cut off from you. And so then that also makes leaving really, really hard. If you don't have access to the financial resources of your household, if you've been cut off from family and friends, if you've not been allowed to work, if the control in your life is such that you don't have some of the resources that might ordinarily be available for you, the idea that you might leave with 3 children and not have a safe place to go, access to money, a place of employment, a safe place for your children to be, those barriers get fast and a hurry, insurmountable for people when they're considering leaving a relationship, even if it's unsafe. So again, that's the place where Peace at Home can come in and provide some financial support, a safe place to leave, and some of the resources that survivors need in order to leave and stay safe and stay out of that relationship. And I'm pretty casual. So at any point, if there are questions or just comments, feel free to interrupt me. It's no problem at all. And this is, I think, as long as I've been doing this work, one of the things that I find the most troubling is that Arkansas has one of the highest rates per capita of domestic violence in the union. And nearly 60% of women in the state of Arkansas will experience domestic violence at some point in their life. So if you know women, you know victims of domestic violence. And it's always stunning to me when I think and consider how many people in our community are living with violence in their lives. Yes.
How, how do we classify what domestic violence?
So that's a great question. So the CDC actually for nearly 40 years has been doing longitudinal data based on things like ER visits, police reports, domestic violence data, and then also surveys that they have done with community members. So it's kind of a little bit of an a la carte that's coming together to bring this data together. And if anything, there's the possibility that we might have some underreported data, right? If anything, which is particularly troubling. Domestic violence is still the number one reason that women in the state of Arkansas go to the emergency room. So it is a impact to all of us. So what does Peace at Home do to help address some of the barriers that might keep a person living in a violent home? Number one, we offer a 24/7 crisis hotline that's available in multiple languages. So at any time, day or night, Christmas morning, New Year's Day, anytime, our crisis hotline is available for people just to call and talk through their situation. And sometimes what a person needs is just validation that what has happened to them is wrong. Like someone to say, no, that's not right. That's violence. That's dangerous. Let me talk to you about ways that you can consider leaving that relationship or reduce your risk of harm, right? Sometimes that validation is just really important. We've talked about the fact we offer a emergency shelter that's available for up to about 55 to 60 people to stay in at any one time, up to 3 months, completely free of charge. Because the reality is leaving domestic violence often means giving up your home because it's the people in your home that are hurting you. So providing a safe place for people and their children to stay. We offer a pet sanctuary. That is because the co-occurrence of domestic violence and animal abuse is highly linked. People who harm animals rarely stop there. They often harm humans, and the reverse is true. And what happens is that survivors will not leave their animals behind, right? So I have a dog, Jim Otto Mills, who is potentially the best boy on the planet. He's a caterpillar for Halloween. And if I think about that, I mean, he's 12 years old. If I had to leave, if I had to flee for any reason, I would want to be able to bring my dog with me. He's provided me comfort for over a decade. And I would not want to leave my animal behind knowing that an abusive partner understood how important that animal was to me and the risk that that might create for my dog if I left my dog behind. So we actually have a place for people who are staying in our shelter to keep their animals with them. So dogs, cats, gerbils, snakes, etc., can come and stay at our facility.
Snakes?
We have had a snake. That's a sidebar conversation of a snake that decided to escape and go down a hallway in the middle of a tour with a donor, which was a great time for all as we were the snakes scurrying down the hallway, but it's fine. It's fine. It's totally fine. Um, you gotta love a residential facility. We also provide free legal representation. We don't need a show of hands, but if you have gone through a divorce, you know how expensive that can be. how difficult that can be. And it is a huge barrier for lots of survivors, right? Not having the resources to pay for legal representation, to get divorced, to establish child support, to get an order of protection. And so we have attorneys that are members of our team that provide free legal representation to survivors and their children. And they work with about 600 families a year, helping them with legal services. This is pretty incredible. We provide housing and advocacy, and that housing support is providing things like paying for first month's rent and last month's rent and a security deposit. Lots of families can afford that ongoing rental payment, even in the ever increasing Northwest Arkansas market, but they may not have the $6,000 laying around that they're going to need to first month's rent, last month's rent, a security deposit. And so that's resources that our organization can provide survivors so that they can get on their way. And then we also provide mental health counseling and support for both adults and children in English and in Spanish, again, completely free of charge. Because sometimes you just need that space to talk about the loss of that relationship, or how mad you are, or how scared you are, or how worried you are. And so we provide a trauma-informed space for survivors to be able to do that work. And I hope you can see that all of our programs are designed to eliminate the barriers that keep people in dangerous situations, right? Let's provide you the financial resources to find new safe housing. Let's help you navigate the legal system. Let's help you process from the trauma of what you've experienced. Let's provide you a safe place to stay while you're figuring it out. It's all about eliminating barriers, because when survivors have the support that they need, they actually can stay independent from the violence in their lives. Okay. All right. So, of course, all of our services are available for any victim of intimate partner violence. So we don't have any sort of restrictions on who that might be. So, like, there are some shelters, and not even specifically like domestic violence shelters, but there are some shelters that maybe teenage boys can't stay at, right? They're not equipped to accommodate teenage boys. Well, again, what mama is going to leave their 15-year-old boy behind? Like, that's not happening, right? So all of our services are available to all members of the household and everyone who's experiencing violence. Okay, so pictures of our amazing staff. So this is 2024 numbers. We're obviously still in 2025. So this is calendar year 2024 numbers. But we had 70 families that we helped with that housing assistance. So first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposits, provided almost 10,000 nights of safe emergency shelter in our facility, which is pretty crazy. We actually just expanded and opened 3 more bedrooms in order to be able to serve more families. So I'm expecting our 2025 numbers will pass over that 10,000 marker. 224 families received legal services in 2024. This is too many twos and fours. And then it was the first year that our sanctuary was open. And so we did have 35 pets in that first year. We'll probably triple that this year. We had our first set of kittens at the pet sanctuary, which was also a lot of fun. That mama cat had 8 kittens over the course of 24 hours. So that was a wild ride for our team. Counseling services to 108 adults and children, and 1,200 crisis calls answered from individuals right here in Northwest Arkansas who are experiencing intimate partner violence. So this is what your cups support, and we thank you for that. Just some nice impact stories about the value and the change that's happened in the lives of survivors after working with our organization. And for me, the biggest change is, and this is the number of people who are still alive. The number of people in our community who are still alive, living their lives, taking care of their kids, and have found peace in their own homes. Like that's the work. Is I don't ever want to have to see them again, that they've moved on in their lives and they experience this as a victim of crime, but it's not defined who they are. And then they can move forth and just be part of our community. That's the work Peace at Home does. We talked about the pet sanctuary. So this is outside of our pet sanctuary. And you can't be sad at any time, no matter how hard your day is, until you've seen a family go over to the sanctuary and play with their dog, or roll around, with a bunch of kittens. And that's part of what happens is the restoration of joy and normalcy, right? We expanded our emergency safe shelter to be able to serve more families. And just a little bit about maybe some challenges and needs. So certainly we've expanded our emergency shelter by 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, and we filled those rooms immediately. I could fill those rooms over and over and over again because the growth in Northwest Arkansas is such that the demand for shelter services often outreaches our capacity. And I think that that's a pain point that a lot of social services in our community have, but certainly something that we think about and try to manage to make sure that when survivors call us, that we can say yes. Certainly, hey, y'all, government funding right now is a little unknown. So about 50% of our budget does come from some form of governmental assistance. And it's just a wild unknown ride right now. And I think that the good thing is that what sustains Peace at Home is Northwest Arkansas. The government support is important, of course, but where we make a difference is in the support we receive in our community. And then certainly, and when we think about greatest needs, is balancing that how much more emergency safe shelter makes sense for us versus other supportive services that we provide, like counseling and legal services. Things that you can do. Obviously, you can shop at our thrift store located on Garland Street, kind of near campus, across from that Harps. We are open Tuesday through Saturday. We certainly would love to see your donations to the thrift store, but also you to shop at our store. All of that money goes back to support survivors, and our clients get to shop there completely for free. So that's really great. You can certainly donate or follow our socials, can subscribe to our newsletter. And then the most important thing is that if you know someone who's experiencing domestic violence, give them the warm referral. You don't have to be an expert about domestic violence, but Jimmy can say, hey, I know who you can call. I know who you can call, and they'll take care of you. And that can be the most important thing that you do to support Peace at Home, is to connect people in our community who might need our services with us. I'm obviously not Eva Terry. I stole her presentation, but any questions or thoughts or comments? Yes.
You mentioned legal representation, the legal team, just what it is, what it looks like, how it's structured.
Yeah, so we've got 2 full-time attorneys that work for our organization. They are funded under a Department of Justice grant, and they primarily focus on family law issues. So that like divorce, custody, child support, bankruptcy, and then also kind of emergency work around orders of protection, just kind of in that like immediate leaving protection kind of space. We don't do criminal law, like of any kind, through our free legal services. Like certainly, like that's the public defender's office or the prosecuting attorney's office. Like that's not our bailiwick. But those civil family law needs is where we're landing, and we cover all of the related court costs for survivors. So if they need an ad litem, if there is additional psychological testing that's ordered, things that judges are going to order of us to do, we're covering those for all of our clients. So they are in-house. Yeah, there are employees, and it's pretty great. And then we've got board members, because obviously we're not a law firm and we're being able to provide them support, but we do have board members that are family law attorneys that kind of act as, support for them, making sure that they're being ethical and appropriate and that we're following all the rules that we would need. I mean, we've got malpractice insurance and all the things, like we're a mini law firm within our larger organization. Did I answer your question? Yeah? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that I think your newsletter is great. It's really effective because it spells out exactly what you did each week, how many people you helped, how many orders of protection were served, and it's very a good model for a nonprofit.
Oh, good. Thank you. I did not pay her to say that, but thank you so much. That's excellent. And was there a question over here? Did I miss? No?
What's the demographic of your survivors, age?
That's a great question. Okay, so let's do age first. So we kind of see three chunks of time with survivors. 18 to 24, you get lots of survivors in that chunk of time. That's actually the time that people experience the highest rate of domestic violence, is 18 to 24, like in those new relationships. The second kind of chunk is when people become mothers. So that kind of like late 20s to early 30s, because there's a kind of a increased escalated violence when people become pregnant. And there's a lot of increased violence in that time. And then the last chunk is really interesting. It's after the kids are out of the house, right? It's like, I've stayed, I've stayed for kids, and I can't have the last years of my life be what the last 25 years. And so that kind of older, not old, but older adult, like that 50, 55, 60-year-old adult, is we get a big chunk. So those are kind of like, in thinking about age, what we see. Primarily, we are talking about women that are in heterosexual relationships, although that's not totally the model. But overwhelmingly, what we see is female victim. And then in terms of like, if we're thinking about the economic demographic all across the spectrum, because just because you maybe have wealth in your household doesn't mean you have access to it. So, and domestic violence can be really impoverishing. And then if we're thinking about like, an ethnic breakdown, I would say it's pretty reflective of Northwest Arkansas. I mean, I don't think that we really see concentration that is misaligned with the demographics that are present in our community. Does that answer your question? Perfect. Was there another question? I felt like yes? Yes.
Decent home. Bristol, is that a fairly good location?
We've been at Garland for on the Garland Street location for probably 10 years. Before that, we were on Sycamore. Mm-hmm. Yes.
A standalone local organization, or are you tied in with others? Or?
We are a standalone 501c3 created here in Fayetteville. We certainly have relationships with like state and national organizations, like advocacy organizations, but we're a local nonprofit. Blake is actually our president of our board right now. So Any complaints you can send his way. Absolutely. Man, this is great. Way to go, Rotarians. All right.
Okay, so 58%. I assume it's education and poverty, but why in Arkansas are so many dudes beating up their families?
Okay, so I think that one of the things that we see that domestic violence is associated with a lot of conservative values around gender norms. So households that tend to have a stronger alignment with the man as the head of the household and the primary decision maker, which tend to align with more traditional religious organizations, that can be a co-occurrence. I think we certainly, and of course, we're in a southern state that has more conservative values. And so I think that we see some of that. I think the other thing we certainly see is poverty and a lack of education and lack of awareness of opportunity, and that violence kind of begets violence. And I think that's probably the pattern that we see often in Arkansas, is that there becomes a normalized pattern of, this is what relationships are like. This is what my parents' relationships was like. And so this is what my relationship, it doesn't seem abnormal for me for this relationship to be like what I saw with my parents. Does that make sense? But certainly education, financial limitations, traditional understanding of gender norms tend to be the primary characteristics. Oh, he's standing up. So we got one more question. Yes.
Limitations, is that generated from unemployment, where they lost their business or their job?
So I think that financial distress, either due to like a loss of a job or whatever, certainly will exasperate feelings of powerlessness, and that can increase the likelihood that violence will occur. Pandemic was really, really difficult. Pandemic really increased violence and increased severity of violence due to the job loss, the control, the lack of resources, the lack of support system and access to other support systems. We saw high rates of violence throughout the pandemic. It's now 12:59 and he's back at the podium. So I will linger if you have additional questions. But boy, I thank you, Rotarians, for your time and questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Teresa. Okay, and stay up here with me for just a moment.
Aw.
As a token of our appreciation, and for you to put on your desk at the office or your credential,
Yeah.
a hog on a cog, a rampaging razorback on a rotary wheel. Display it proudly.
I
Thank you for
will.
what you do.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's let the piggies win. Thank you.
All right. Okay, any last business before we adjourn? All right, if not, we are adjourned.
All right, gang, another great meeting.